right, we're down to the home stretch in the U.S. presidential elections, the race to the White House between Donald Trump, the Republican ticket, and Kamala Harris, the Democratic ticket. And it is going right down to the wire. 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks to the polls. Who stands where? Let's take a look at the average of the Real Clear Politics poll that has just come out. This is as of 20th October 2024. And the gap is absolutely at a hair's breadth. Less than 1% separates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Kamala Harris at 49.2% and Donald Trump at 48.3%. Like I said, this is less than 1%. It's the closest that the average of the Real Clear polling has been in the last couple of months since Harris's candidature was formally announced at the Democratic Convention. So this is literally on a knife's edge. This could go either way. Just to put that into perspective, the margin of error in most polls in the US is plus or minus 3%. In this case, it is less than 1%, so it could go either way. It could be a Harris presidency or it could be a Trump presidency, but more importantly, it could also be Harris winning the popular vote but losing the Electoral College. The problem for Harris is that her gap, her lead has actually been narrowing when compared to where it was a month ago or 2 months ago. Let's start from August. This was a couple of weeks after Joe Biden withdrew on the 21st of July, and then Harris sort of racked up the delegates, the Democratic delegates. The last time Trump led in this tracker of the Real Clear Politics tracker from August to now was on the 4th of August. It was a slender lead that Trump had, less than half a percentage point. Trump at 47.3 and Kamala Harris at 46.9. This was in the first week of August. Then you cut to the third week of August, right after the Democratic National Convention, and then Kamala Harris had what they call a convention bump. So she went into the lead with a gain of 1.5 percentage points, Trump at 46.9 and Kamala Harris at 48.4. This was on the 22nd of August, just the day after the convention concluded, which gave her a what is generally known as a traditional post-convention bump. Then that lead of 1.5 points further increased all through the last week of August, going all the way up to the ABC News debate, the only presidential debate in this election cycle. That happened on the 10th of September. The biggest lead that Kamala Harris has had in these last couple of months is on the 17th of September. She clocked 49.3% and Trump had 47.3%, the gap of 2 percentage points, exactly a week after the ABC News debate. So this is the highest lead that Kamala Harris has had in the last couple of months at 49.3 and 47.3. The problem, look at the two worms. From about the first week of October or so, the Trump worm has been going up, the red worm, whereas the Harris worm has been pretty much flat. So what that means is Trump is the one who's coming from behind. He's the candidate who is seemingly having momentum behind him. He's got tailwind and he's catching up and narrowing the gap. That is not a place where you want to be as a Democratic candidate, where Harris's sort of polling numbers have flattened out around that 49.3% mark, whereas Trump is catching up and he's narrowing the gap.
He has no plan for how he would address the needs of the American people. He is only focused on himself.
Now worked for 15 minutes more than Kamala. Okay, she never worked here.
All right, so Trump is closing on the gap, but he's not crossed Kamala Harris yet. And yet, today, 2 weeks out from the polls, why is that bad news for Harris and good news for Trump? Because relatively speaking, if you were to look at Harris where she is right now on the 20th of October, 2 weeks out from the polls, you compare that to the previous three Democratic candidates, all the way from Barack Obama in 2012, on the last or the penultimate week, 2 weeks leading up to the last 2 weeks leading up to the vote, Barack Obama was leading by 2.5 percentage points against Mitt Romney, who was the Republican nominee that year. Hillary Clinton, in the very first year that Donald Trump ran in 2016, she had a lead of 6.5 points. 6.5 points in the third week of October, leading up to the election in the first week of November, and yet Hillary Clinton lost the election. You know why she lost the election? She won the popular vote. She won by plus 3% in the popular vote, but the Electoral College she lost. She lost the critical battleground states of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, despite having a 6.5% lead in the third week of October. Joe Biden, on the other hand, in the 2020 election, his lead was even bigger. He had an 8.5 point lead to Donald Trump in 2020, and that translated when he had such a massive lead of 8.6%, that translated into a big electoral college win. In fact, Biden got more than 300 electoral college votes. He won the critical battleground states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Now, this is why this is worrying for Kamala Harris. She is polling far less than 3 of her Democratic predecessors in the past 3 election cycles. She is leading by under 1%, which means if Hillary Clinton at 6.5% could not win the electoral college, then there is a huge question mark on whether at 0.9%, less than 1%, Kamala Harris can win the electoral college. Now, this is one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that Trump's own favorability, net favorability ratings as they call it, that has actually improved. Remember, in 2016, the first time he fought the election, he had a net unfavorability of minus 27 points. He's been slowly working on that. He's been improving that. In 2020, he almost managed to halve that. From minus 27, it came down to minus 12 points. And in this election cycle, this is his 3rd election running for president, the top job in America. In the 2024 election cycle, his net unfavorability has come down to minus 9. So from minus 27, he's cut it down to a third in the last 8 years. So his net unfavorability is just minus 9, which means Kamala Harris has a tougher job. She's taking on a slightly more popular Trump than he was in 2020, and certainly than what he was in 2016.